Ready to take off? Who is sitting there? Not yet. We don't know. Not there.
It's waiting for somebody.
The invisible woman.
Or man. Somebody is laughing there.
Who made that?
I think that's that microphone.
Was this microphone? It happened also during the meditation.
Yeah, I think it's this.
Oh. We have 4 or 5 of those because they tend to go well. First thing is this little head comes off the, what looks like the hat. Yeah. The hat of the guards in Buckingham Palace. That's how they got this idea, I think. You come sit in front. Why leave it empty, huh?
Absolutely.
Pardon me?
Absolutely.
Yes. Om Apyayantu mamangani Vakpranaschakshushrotramatho balamindriyani cha sarvani Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam Maham Brahma Nirakaryam Mama Brahma Nirakarot Anirakaranamastvanirakaranam me astu Tadatmani nirateya upanishatsu dharmaste mahi santu te mahi santu Om Shanti 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Now, we will chant the first mantra together. Ya Atma Apahata Papma Vijaro Vimrityuhu Vishoko Vijighatso. Actually, if we say that, then we should say Vijighatso Pipasaha Satyakamaha Satyasankalpaha Sonveshtavyah Savijignyasitavyah Sasarvamscha lokan apnoti Sarvamscha kaman Yahatam Atmanam anuvidya Vijanati Ha Prajapatihi Uvacha. A few things before we move on to the story. We are already in the story. We are coming back to this. Couple of things. One is that the suffix tavya, here it becomes tavya also, vijignyasitavyaha, anveshtavyaha, because of sandhi rules, some conjugation rules, it becomes ta or ta. So tavya is a suffix which has the power of must be done. That's what it means. Must be done. It's an injunction. It's an injunction, and it is, it is very reminiscent of a portion in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, another Upanishad, where Yagyavalkya and his wife Maitreyi have a dialogue. And the sage Yagyavalkya says, I want to go away for jnana nishtha, to abide in this knowledge. I want to not have to deal with finances and goats and cows and all the things he had. And in fact, he was a very wealthy sage, and he made his money by defeating everybody in Vada, debates. And such was his wealth that, like when he used to go to some place, like in another portion of the same Upanishad, he goes to King Janaka to have a Vada. And then, he's gone with a few of his brahmacharis, the students, and he tells, the debate has not even begun, and he tells the students, take all the cows belonging to the king home, back to the ashram, because, it's not easy to travel with cows, so that you can reach before nightfall. So that itself is alarming, because you go to somebody's property and then say that you march off with that person's property. Not only that, as though that was not enough, nobody from the king's palace raises any objection, because they know that he is going to win the debate, and they know that the cows are the reward, and he is going to march with them anyway. In fact, they invited him so that the king invited him so that he could lose and then thereby become his disciple. You see, this was Yagyavalkya, very wealthy, and he says to Maitreyi, honey, yeah, I'm off. I've had it done, I have outgrown this marriage. This is a very interesting thing. In India, you don't need to leave, The marriage leaves you. You don't need to leave the marriage. You outgrow it. It's a very nice system, very sound. Nobody feels rejected, because by the time you say I'm ready to leave, the other person says, thank God. So this is a very nice thing, a wonderful system. And so, he says, he had two wives. We don't know what the other wife said when he declared that he is going away. Her name was Katyayini. And Katyayini must have said, bye, see you or not, see you later or not, no problem. But she was very close to him. She was very attached to him. And she asks a question. When he says, I have made you a very wealthy woman and I have distributed equally all my assets and the cows and the land and everything, farms, all the signs of wealth. She says that the reason for which you are going, can I buy the same thing with the money you have left me? It's a very sarcastic question. She knows the answer. She knows better. She knows the answer. But still, to show him, the error of his ways, she says this. And he, being an honest person, he says, Vittena nashasti amritasya. Na asha asti. There is no hope for getting this Atma, which is apahata papma, which is free of guilt, remorse. There is no way of getting this knowledge with the wealth. Then she says that if I am, your wife, your spouse, I am what is that? Entitled to everything you have. And you have this knowledge to firm up which you are going, you better teach me before you go. Then the teaching begins, and the opening lines of the Pratigna, the thesis statement there, is almost identical to the one here. So this opening verse in the Chandogya stands right in the middle of the message given by the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and the message given by the Taittiriya Upanishad. It's in fact a wonderful amalgam of the two. And so there, Yagyavalkya in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, Atma vai, are, oh honey, Atma vai, indeed the Atma, drashtavyaha, it is to be seen. Of course, you can't see the Atma, you are the Atma. How can you, the seer cannot be seen. But here seen means as good as, the knowledge should be so firm that you are almost seeing it. As good as seeing it. So then, darshanartham kim kartavyaha. Here also we see the tavya, drashtavyaha. Just because it is ta, don't be fooled, it is still tavya. Because it is with the shakara there, it becomes ta instead of ta to match the thing. And so atma vai are drashtavyaha. It has to be as good as seen. And in order to as good as see it, what should I do? And then he says, Atma vai are drashtavyaha shrotavyaha. It must be listened to. It must be listened to. Of course, all we have to supply the other missing, filling in the blanks. We have to fill in the blanks. It must be listened to by a teacher who knows how to handle the pramana, the means of knowledge, which are the Upanishads, which is Vedanta. Vedanta itself is an independent means of knowledge, which helps me to see that which can never be objectified, which helps me to understand that which is not an object. The other means of knowledge help one to only objectify those things that can be objectified, like sight, hearing, logic, anumana, arthapatti, inference, one step, more than one step. All these means of knowledge that I have in my hand are good for understanding objects, because I am not displaced from the seat of the knower. The knower is not rattled in the operation of the means of knowledge in my hand. Like pratyaksha, the 5, primary ways of the sense organs, operation of the sense organs. Anumana, inference, more than one step inference. Arthapatti, upama, similarities. Knowing something, which is similar. Sometimes they say that there is one kind of a cow-like creature. It's called blue cow, Nilgai. Nobody has seen this. Very few people know this. It's kind of a cross between a cow and a horse. It looks funny. But it is blue in color, greyish, so kind of blue. So if I told you this, it's like it's got the body of the cow but got the elegance of a horse, and then when you see it, so this is called upama because it is known through comparison. And then anupalabdhi, the cognizance of absence. So like this, these are the means of knowledge, the ways of knowing that I have in my hand to operate. But here when he says shrotavyaha, it must be listened to, that means it is out of the scope of the means of knowledge which I operate. And that is why this is the only way. There is no other way. Because Vedanta is in itself its own means of knowledge. And just like I back up something that I have seen with my own eyes, I said, I am the eyewitness, I saw this. See, the same, that's because I have Shraddha in my sight. I say, I saw this, I heard this with my own ears, I have seen this with my own eyes. That same Shraddha, that faith I have, I need to cultivate, discover with regard to the words of the teaching handled properly by the teacher. Because the pramana has to be handled. It doesn't speak on its own. The pramana is there, it has to be shown, and this pramana is very powerful because the other means of knowledge do not rattle the status of the knower. The knower sits in the chair comfortable. It's like an armchair philosophy, the other means of knowledge. Because I sit, I'm comfortable, I don't have to be dethroned from the place of being the knower. Here, this rattles the seat of the knower. The knower has to be displaced, because otherwise there's always this knower-known, subject-object difference. How can there be non-duality? So, Shrotavyaha, it must be listened to. And that itself is enough. But if it is not enough, then Mantavyaha. Because Shravanam is Mukhya sadhana. Mukhya means what? The primary way of understanding and knowing. And sometimes the ears are blocked by what? Ragadvesha wax. So therefore, one needs a little more meditation, perhaps, more listening, and then after the listening, one has to sometimes go away and then think about it. And sometimes, one has studied, but then suddenly standing under the shower, Atma, Apahata Papma, I get it. Why? The hot shower on the head stimulated the blood vessels, And the latent, dormant knowledge, came out to play. That is what it did. You became aware that you know. That's what happened. Now you know. That's what happened. And then if that is also not enough, sometimes one knows and one has no doubts that, Mantavyaha means one has to remove the doubts. So there are no doubts, but then, no doubt I am Brahman, but then how can I be Brahman? I am this in this body, mind, sense complex. Brahman is Apahata Papma, it is wonderful, it is huge, it is limitless, and how can I be that? I know I am that, but I don't behave like Brahman. Brahman does not lose the temper. I am losing my temper. Brahman is always cool. I can't say that about myself. Brahman does not do half the things I do. So if I am Brahman, then I'm not living in the same way. I have habitual orientations, especially around familiar people, that do not let me live the extent of my knowledge, to live that knowledge. And so therefore, nididhyasitavyaha. Regurgitate the words of the Upanishad, the Shastra that you know, and contemplate upon them. Much like a cow in the field. A cow doesn't know how long it's going to be in the pasture. It has no sense of time. And it's hungry and it eats. And it has 4 stomach chambers. And after that it looks, okay, nobody's coming to take me back. Sits under a tree, and that's when it brings up all the thing it has chewed hurriedly, and then it proceeds to make wheat grass juice and, have itself a smoothie. That's when it makes the smoothie. And so too, this nididhyasitavyaha, it must be contemplated upon, and this contemplation, not of something unknown, something that I have already studied and understood. The repeated being in it, soaking in the knowledge, removes the habitual orientations. And there also these 3 words, Shrotavyaha, Mantavyaha, Nididhyasitavyaha, have the power of, injunction. Niyama. Niyama means it must be done. The Veda has all these. The first portion of the Veda has similar injunctions. This must be done. Suram na pibet. Don't drink alcohol. Don't kalanjam na bhakshayet. Don't eat flesh, of animals. All these things have the power of injunction. Udite juhoti, injunction. Meaning, as the sun rises, the person starts the yajna. What is the yajna? Fire ritual. So the timing of the fire ritual is given. Udite juhoti. Oh, that's so early. Is there a choice? Anudite juhoti. Before sunrise or during sunrise. Only 2 choices. So, like this, the whole, Veda is full of injunctions. And here too, in the current context, we see that it is very similar to the injunctions in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. there are two tavyas that we encounter. What is that? Anveshtavyaha and Vijijñasitavyaha. So it has to be inquired into, but not dispassionately, passionately with a desire to know. It has to be inquired into. And the desire to know has to be cultivated. Has to be cultivated. Has to be cultivated. And so these are the two tavyas. And there is a very interesting discussion here. And this discussion is wonderful because it says, the discussion says, why, if this is an injunction, is this an injunction like, please offer the ghee, ghee, right? The clarified butter which we offer in the homas, please offer the ghee from the left side 3 times and from the right side 3 times. There also tavya is used. There also the injunction is used. So is it the same? And Adi Shankara in the commentary argues it is not the same. Why?
One is for fulfilling your wishes.
One is for fulfilling your desires, and what's the other one? Is to see that you are already fulfilled without fulfilling the desires. So the audience is different for both the tavyas, the injunctions occurring in the first portion of the Veda and the injunctions such as this one. And then the injunctions are having an immediate effect. This is the second difference. Whereas udite juhoti or juhuyat, whatever if you say, please offer this kind of a fire ritual at sunrise. You offer and then what happens? Nothing happens. Business as usual. You get sleepy, that's all, after going to work because you have woken up at 2:30 a.m. Nothing happens. So there is immediate effect is not there, but that doesn't mean it's useless. Yeah, because Chitragupta takes some time updating the karmic profile, correct? So all the punya, here it is called apurva. This punya generated is another name for punya is called apurva. So this apurva gets collected and then it's not immediately dispensed. It's like what is that called? It's like a CD in the bank. Is that called CD? What is that called? Yeah, CD. Yeah, not the CD you listen to. Yeah, but the CD in the bank. So when you put the CD in the bank, then for 1 year you cannot withdraw, correct? Because otherwise there are penalties. Here you cannot withdraw, period. You are not in charge of it. It just dispenses little bit of, sometimes the capital gets dispensed, a lot of punya, sometimes the interest gets dispensed. So this apurva, it comes and goes and it is there, but you don't know when. You know that you have collected the punya, but you have no say over when it will fructify and give you either a loka in the afterlife or right in this life some nice chocolate cake. You don't know which one and when it will come, correct? But with this tavya, the force of the injunction that we hear in the sentences like, anveshtavyaha, vijijñasitavyaha, Adi Shankara points out that the dividends are instantaneous. Immediately you know. How long does it take to say that you are free of guilt? Not very long. And it's a way, and the way to teach it, you can immediately understand and see that. All you have to say is, in sleep, do you feel guilty? What is the answer? No. So already there is a doubt, vyabhichara, there is a contradiction. So in the waking state, I feel guilty and remorseful. In sleep, I don't. Which is real? There cannot be two reals. One of them has to be real. Why can't there be two? Both, I'm afflicted and I'm unafflicted. Why can't I have both? Because I don't want to be afflicted. I'm rejecting that. I'm rejecting the guilt. That's how I know that I am already in a way understanding what I am. There is some taste for it. Without having tasted that, one cannot have a desire for something that is unknown. So this moksha that I am striving for is somewhat known. And it is in keeping with my understanding of myself. I just don't know how I am free of guilt. That has to be understood. So the returns are instantaneous. So it is not being, so when I listen to the Atma, when I seek the Atma, Tavya, when I follow the rules, it's not that in afterlife I will get moksha. It is right here, right now. This is what one has to, understand. So now this much I wanted to say, because yesterday we didn't have a chance to do this. Now we go back to the story. Who are these people? Indra and then Virochana. So they set forth with their little lunch packets in search of Atma, and they know they have to go to who? Prajapati. Why? Because Prajapati was the one who made the declaration, where in the 4th section of the aforementioned 8th chapter, he made the declaration, which is being repeated here, that this Atma is free of guilt, free of old age, free of decrepitude, free of death, free of hunger, free of thirst. It is just simply free. And it is in fact the cause of the universe, because of whose intentions this universe has been projected infallibly. It is of infallible intentions. And infallible it is Bhagavan, it is God, it is Ishvara. And that God is you, the one who thinks I am just a mere consumer of karma phala. I am merely just eating the karma phala. This is nothing but you. So this declaration impressed everyone. And so both of them set forth to gain this. They met each other on the way. They did not say a word to each other. In fact, they did not even look at each other. They walked sideways, back to back, so that they would not have to interact. And then what? They reached the abode of Prajapati, and they each had brought him a present. What did they bring? Bundles of stick. For his yajna, why is Prajapati continuing to do yajna when he knows, when he should be knowing, because he is the teacher. So why is he continuing to do the yajna which is producing finite results when he knows the infinite? We have to say as though. And also he is the creator of the universe, and so he is setting an example of how, one can continue to do this and not be affected by the results. So that's why. So then they both bring a bundle of sticks. Indra offers the bundle of stick and does namaskara, and then Virochana, copycat, copy asura, also does the same. And then a strange thing happens. They both stay there for 32 years in the ashram. Both of them. In Prajapati's ashram, they live as brahmacharis, eating rice and dal one day, and then next day what? Dal and rice, and occasionally one gulab jamun, and then they live like this for 32 years. Not a word is exchanged between the two of them or with the teacher. This is very strange. Because it is strange, because it is, not in keeping with the eagerness with which they set out. Correct? They left all their finery. They left bed coffee. Correct? Breakfast in bed, whatever they were having, golden robes, golden thrones, and the power, all ornaments, everything they took off. So much they renounced, such was the eagerness, their head was on fire, they really wanted to go and listen, or wanted this Atma. So they go to Prajapati and don't say a word. Okay, 1 or 2 days, okay, they were settling in. 1 week, okay, 10 days, okay, 1 month, okay, 1 year also, okay. But how did they stay and why did they stay for 32 years? The Upanishad is silent on the question. But I am not silent on the question. Here is where the adhikaritvam is coming into play. And what is this adhikaritvam? Probably they did not know that this is a knowledge to be asked for. They did not know. They just thought if they lived with the person who made this declaration, somehow the apahata papmatvam will rub off on them. And one day, tada, they will wake up and know. The goody and the baddie. Who is the goody? Indra. And who is the baddie? Virochana. Both of them are there. And both of them are exalted. This is the beauty of the Upanishad. I am calling them a baddie. Upanishad says even he went for, even this Asura, this demonic being, after bashing up a few of his friends who were contending for the post of gaining this knowledge, he too went in search for this knowledge. So he too is exalted. So here there is a adhikaritvam is not there. And that's why the first declaration was what? Anveshtavyaha. It should be sought after. So they followed the first declaration. They immediately left everything and went. But they could not follow, they did not know enough to follow the second declaration, part of the declaration, the second to-do, must-do list, checklist for Atma. What was the first one? It has to be sought after. Okay, whoever made this statement, we are going to seek him, and they went and sought him. And what was the second on the to-do list? What was the second item?
Desire to know how.
Yeah, you have to express. First you have to discover, cultivate a desire to know. That was not there because they did not know this is a matter of knowing. They thought perhaps this is a matter of doing. If I'm a really good brahmacharis and if I rub down the cows very nicely and if I milk the cows even better and if I take them to pasture and make the best cow dung patties in Brahmaloka, I will immediately get this knowledge somehow. So for 32 years, they just kept dwelling. And then without knowing the truth of their indweller, they just kept dwelling in the ashram. Eating ashram food for free. And, they did some seva perhaps, but they had no desire to know. The desire to know not being there, they did not ask any questions. It is unclear whether they attended classes or not. It is also unclear whether Prajapati had other students and whether there were classes or not, or whether it was just a teacher living and they went and lived with a teacher. And Prajapati is a very patient man, as can be seen from the story. So let us read a little bit and see what happens. तौह द्वात्रिगुंशतं वर्षाणि ब्रह्मचर्यं ऊषितुः तौह प्रजापतिः उवाच किमिच्छन्तौ अवास्तमिति तौह ऊचुतुः य आत्मा अपहत पाप्मा विजरो विमृत्युः विशोको विजिघत्सः अपिपासः सत्यकामः सत्यसङ्कल्पः सोन्वेष्टव्यः सविजिज्ञासितव्यः स सर्वांश्च लोकान् आप्नोति सर्वांश्च कामान् यः तमात्मानम् अनुविद्य विजानाति भगवतः वचः वेदयन्ते तमिच्छन्तौ अवास्तमिति. Yeah. So 32 years he watches them from sunrise to sunset, brushing their teeth, going about their jobs, and going to sleep at night and getting up again in the morning, day after day, year after year. And Prajapati is a very patient man, so he waits for 32 years, either hoping that they'll ask something or hoping that they will go away. And when neither of the things happen, he asks them a very important question. So, Dvatrigum Shatam Varshani Ushutuhu means vas means to live, and vas under certain passive construction and this remote construction takes what is called samprasarana and becomes u. So they lived, and a long time ago they lived for 32 years brahmacharya, practicing brahmacharya. Brahmacharya means it's a very minimalist life. You're not thinking about what movies are playing in town, which yajna to attend, all these things you're not doing. You're just strictly managing your mind, acquiring shama, dhamma, etc. and leading a minimalist life, doing karma yoga. This is what they were doing for 32 years. So then after which Prajapati poses a question. Kimicchantau, desiring what have you been living here? What for are you here? A very pertinent question. Why did you come to the ashram? What do you want? Of course, he waited for 32 years and he had his reasons. And perhaps his reasons was, let them just come and settle down. Why did it take 32 years to settle down? Because that's how it is. That's how the mind is. That's how the restlessness is. That's how the tamas and rajas are. 32 years is nothing. And of course it is in celestial time. And so, so 32 years, even if it was in earth time, it's not much for self-growth. So during which time they have grown. How do we know? Adi Shankara inserts his beautiful bhashya and says, we know that they have grown because in these 32 years we did not hear of a single dispute between these two arch enemies who hated one another. Even, all the desires they were managing, including the desire to fight with one another. Why? For the sake of this knowledge. They didn't know they had to ask for it. They didn't know they had to acquire a desire for it. But nonetheless, they wanted that. They were not aware of the desire, but they had the desire for this Atma. They just did not know. It was a matter of knowing. So their desire for this Atma even made them conquer their rivalry and, between each other. So they did not have a brahmachari showdown. I am a better brahmachari than you. I am a better student than you. Look at how many cows that, I have been able to take to the pasture. Look at how quickly I do the work and look at what you are doing. None of that showmanship was displayed. And Adi Shankara concludes from this in the Bhashya saying that just shows how serious and how desired this matter of the Atma is. This knowledge of the Atma is so desired that even arch enemies forget to fight with one another, and the seriousness of the pursuit naturally lets them let go of any other small ends of showing themselves off or putting the other one down. Whatever little pleasure they got from that, even that they renounced. That is why Prajapati waited. In a way, it was a test. In a way, it was allowing he was allowing them to settle down. And after 32 years, seeing that they were quietened, because when you ask the question, when the Vedanta teacher, then you have to give the answer, because then they will answer something. Then the teaching has to start, and they have to be at least a little bit ready for the teaching. And it took them 32 years because several blocks were there. They were very rich and they were very powerful. They already thought they knew, just like Narada in the 7th chapter. He knew everything and he still was puzzled why he is subject to sorrow. Soham bhagavah shochami. I am he, not I am that. Which he, not Bhagavan. Soham actually means hoham. Here he was saying, I know all these things. But I don't know the Atma, but he didn't say I don't know the Atma, I know all these things, yet I am subject to sorrow. He was puzzled why. Here too, it's not easy because, like I said, when you have a lot to give up, it takes longer, and them being powerful kings, of the Devas and Asuras, it took a long time to settle down and calm down, and after which Prajapati did them a favor of asking, "Oh gentlemen, why have you come? What is it that you want to understand? What is it that you want from me? Because you're just following me around. What is it that you want from me?" And they said, in one voice, it's very interesting. It's almost like they were clones of each other. They did everything together. And they pursued this knowledge together. And here they are answering in unison. And what did they answer? They repeated Prajapati's declaration back to him. Even after 32 years, they had not forgotten the exact wordings of the declaration. They so impressed they were by it that they were, reminding themselves of this every day. They had it memorized. Ya atma apahatapatma vijaraha vimrityuhu vishokaha vijighatsaha apipasaha. Satyakamah satyasankalpah saha anveshtavyah saha vijigyasitavyah. All this they knew. This Atma, free of guilt, free of hurt, free of hunger, free of thirst, free of remorse, free of all kinds of old age, free of disease, free of death. This has to be looked into. This one has to cultivate a desire to know, which they didn't do, of course. And then, this is, we've heard you say that, so we thought we'll come live with you. Oh, revered sir. So they knew exactly how to approach the teacher and how to talk with respect. They must have learnt from their own elders. And so they said, "Oh, revered teacher, Bhagavaha, oh, revered one, we've heard you say this in a different context. And we saw that you said that. And then what? We are very impressed by this statement. And, Bhagavataha vachaha vedayante tam ichchantau avastam iti." So, knowing this, knowing what you have said, knowing that this is what you have said, and because of this, it is this purpose, because you said that, we came and we lived with you. And then Prajapati starts to teach. Prajapati has his own way of teaching. And my understanding is that even in between Indra and Virochana, there is a Bheda. Bheda means difference. After all, Virochana is not called Asura without reason, correct? And even a etymology into their names reveals a lot. In Yaska's Nirukta, the etymology of the word Indra is very interesting. Iram dharayati iti Indraha. Ira means blessings. The holder, the wielder of blessings. That is his name. Indum dadati iti Indraha. Indu here means drops. Drops of what? Water. Because Indra is seen as the god of rain in some certain circumstances. So the blessing in the form of life-giving rain, which cleanses all the toxins, which makes the earth fertile, because his weapon is the thunderbolt, Vajra, which causes the clouds to clash one another and rain. Indum dadati. Iram, dharayati, the wielder of blessings. And Indu also means luster. Indu is the self-shining Atma. Idam karoti iti Indra. These are all Yaska's definition of the etymological derivation of the word Indra. Idam karoti. Idam karoti means what all he cannot do. It is a name of Bhagavan. So you see, in the word Indra we have one name of the Lord. Idam karoti, kim na karoti, idam karoti means all this. Idam means all this. This whole universe he has manifested. That's one meaning. Other meaning is Iram dharayati. Ira means blessing. Whether it's the blessing in the form of the thunder and rain, life-giving rain, or whether it's blessings of so many kinds. And then what? Indu. Indu means Indum dadate, or whatever it is. So Indu here means the lustrous one. The shining one is called Indra. A shining one, source of blessing. Now let us also do the same etymological deconstruction of Virochana's name. Yesterday I spent a lot of time for words starting with V. Now you know why. How are you going to deconstruct? How are you going to resolve the compound in Virochana's name? To help, I will give the meaning of the word Rochanaha. Rochanaha again means shine. Okay? So V plus shine.
Hard shine.
Lackluster. Could be. Vigataha Rochanaha Yasmat question mark or Visheshena Rochanaha, that which shines specially, specifically, wonderfully, or the one from which all shine has departed. Interesting, huh? So if he is not luster, let us take the second derivation. If he is lackluster, if he is not, he lacks luster, so he is lackluster, okay? So if he is lackluster, that makes him what? A shadow, because no luster. Interesting. Very interesting. This explains why they speak in unison, why they do everything in unison. Could it be perhaps that it is just one person? Just like the story of what? 2 birds. How many birds are really there? 1. Sa ekaha. That's just one. But it is seen as 2. Again in the Kathopanishad. Ritam pibantau sukritasya loke guham pravishtau. 2. Again all this dual. Parame parardhe. But then when you look into the 2, what is this 2? The 2 fellows go into a cave, a cavern. No, it's a tavern because drinks are being served. Oh, what are they drinking? Karma cocktail. Yeah. Sukrita and Dushkrita mixed up. And then, who is the bartender? Chitragupta, of course. He's mixing them a cocktail and giving it to them. Pibantau, are they both drinking? No. One is drinking. The other one just happens to be in bad company. So, because of sahavasa dosha, because of being in this company, this person is also included and the dual is used, pibantau. But those who know, ye brahma vidaha vadanti, the people who know Brahman say, chaya tapau. Atapa, one is Atapa, one is the luster, and the other one is just merely the shadow. In fact, it's a shadow gone rogue. Yes, the shadow is drinking. The original is not drinking. Isn't the shadow supposed to mimic the original? Yes, except when it goes rogue. Why it goes rogue, all that we will see. Goes rogue means has a roga, bhava roga. That's what it is. Yeah, bhava roga means a disease of samsara. That's what makes it go rogue. And so here also, perhaps even though Adi Shankara doesn't take this particular road, it is worth looking into. This is worth exploring. That perhaps the 2 are just one. So Indra and his inner Asura both go for the knowledge. One is the light, Indra, the powerful, a source of blessing, the one who has cultivated his personality. One is the person and the other the personality. One is the sun, the sun-like in its luster, and the other one is a shady fellow. Shadow. The problem is that without this knowledge, the shadow becomes real. And we spend a lot of time tending to the shadows. very shady occupation, tending to the shadow all the time. And the shadow, the beauty of the shadow is that it depicts itself as real. That is a very powerful, way in which it presents itself. So the asura is not someone, one way to look at this is that it's not somebody outside Indra. We can take it as two people, no problem. And you can look at the adhikari bheda, that one is a better adhikari than the other one, all that we can do. There's no fun in that. That's just very obvious. The fun is in looking at something that is not apparent. And what is not apparent here is how they end up voicing the same lines. They end up doing the same things. They're not having, it's not that Indra says Atma apahata papma and Virochana says, wait, we had heard you say this. No, they both are speaking in unison with one voice because they really have one body, they have one voice, but there is an inner parting of ways. And in fact, the one doesn't know the other exists. That's why it is called the unconscious, because one is not conscious of it. That's why they don't see each other on the way. Even though they are together, they don't see each other, they don't acknowledge each other. Because the shadow, of course, will not acknowledge that which is real, because it wants to be the real one. And then what? The real one is not fully aware of the shadow, although it is constantly hijacked by the shadow. This is what the whole thing is. So perhaps it is vigataha rochanaha yasmat. Rochana here means shine. And what is this shine? Self-shining Atma really. And so vigataha rochanaha yasmat means really we are talking of a form of anatma. This is just the beginning of the quest. The distinction between Atma and not Atma is made only in the beginning. Ultimately, we get to the place of seeing that Anatma is also Atma, but Atma is not Anatma. We have to understand that. Otherwise, we'll be left with two. But in the beginning, it's good to see that. So, Virochana is the embodiment of everything that comes under the category of not I, within the body, mind, sense complex. So body is what? Atma or Anatma?
Body is
Anatma, And then mind is what? Anatma. Sense is Anatma. Ragas, Anatma. Dvesha, Anatma. So whatever question I ask, answer is Anatma. So Anatma, right? Yeah. And then all kinds of thoughts, fears, Anatma. Sorrow, Anatma. Well, this old age, Anatma. In fact, all those were negated for the Atma. That's why they are all Anatma. So the Anatma has taken over here in the presence of, in the embodiment of Virochana. And that's why it took 32 years, for them to live there. Indra and his unconscious lived there for 32 years, intact, because Virochana has not departed. And then what? Prajapati finally asked them, and it's very interesting, Prajapati also sees too. This is something to be commented upon. It's not that they themselves are seeing too and Prajapati says, what do you, singular, want? He also asks, what do you both want? Why does he say that? He knows what is Atma, correct? Yeah. He says that, he acknowledges that because they are acknowledging the division. So he goes along with it. Just like in the first portion of the Veda, the desirer is acknowledged. The one who is a wanting person is acknowledged and addressed, even though that's not ultimately the truth of the person. The wanting person is addressed and all the wants, you can have some spells, you can have some mantras, you can have some yajnas. So here too, because that split is there, and because one is seeing the split, the teacher is also acknowledging the split. So this is really a very good, interesting portrayal of the teaching lineage. The Guru Parampara, and what stands out is that even though one thinks, even though one student is approaching the teacher, actually two people are approaching the teacher. At least two, sometimes more. So each Vedanta teacher is approached by two people in one, acting as though they are one. And who are these people? One is what we call the unconscious, or the truncated being, which is an amalgam of frozen needs and desires, unrequited feelings and desires from a long time ago, which were not able to be fulfilled. So one is a bunch of frozen needs, and the other one is a jignasu. This is very interesting. The jignasu wants knowledge. The one with the frozen need wants to be held and thawed out. That's what it is. The one which has all the needs. So in other words, the student coming to the teacher, the split here is clearly shown. One wants a mother or the father. One wants to be mothered and parented. One wants to be parented, and the other one wants the knowledge simultaneously. You see the occupational hazards of the Vedanta teacher here. Who to tend to? If you tend to the adult, the baby cries. If you tend to the baby, no knowledge is given. And we saw how Pujya Swamiji handled this with a finesse of, and mastery that is unparalleled. Really. Such mastery. Because everybody, all the students, at some point or the other in their life, in their, understanding, being with him, used him as a dartboard for their frustrations, which had nothing to do with him. So, how to deflect those projections, not believe in them, but still address them and, keep both of them happy. Keep the Indra and the Virochana in each student happy. So that, because if the Virochana is completely ticked off, they will leave, correct? But if Virochana is completely enshrined and enthroned, no teaching takes place. The teaching is compromised. So how to give Virochana inside each student a little scrap, but at the same time address the teaching to Indra. This was a mastery that Pujya Swamiji displayed that is unparalleled, really. You will not find that anywhere else. It was just amazing. Just amazing, And one time, I went to him. I'm digressing from the text, but it's worth it. One time I went to him, I was asked to, organize a conference. And I went to him, and we were supposed to get some addresses from some people, all the list of the people who were supposed to come. We were supposed to invite them, and they said they will share their database. And, this was a long time ago. That time email and all were not, we had to actually physically get the addresses. And email was there, but not as much as it is now. And so I went to their office, I went to their house, I went everywhere. And they just, gave me tea instead of the addresses. It became abundantly clear that they were not giving the addresses. They didn't want to. And, I just... and I was very frustrated because the time was going, when are we going to invite them? What conference? The date had been set, everything had happened, and I was anxious. So I went to Pujya Swamiji and I said, how should I understand them? They are not giving the addresses. And I thought he'll tell some serious piece of teaching. But he just looked very casually, he looked up from his tea that he was drinking. And then he just had a little smile playing on his, corners of his lips. And then he said, it just means, what does this mean, Swamiji, I asked. He says, it just means two possibilities. I said, what? One is that they were dogs in their last life and that territorial samskara has not gone. They're guarding the addresses, carefully. And the other possibility is that they're getting, because of their territoriality, they're getting ready to be dogs in their next life. That was the last thing I expected him to say. But you see, there was a master stroke, because in saying that, there was an immediate validation of the problem, and he was assuring me that it was not my fault. Neither was it their fault, it's their samskaras. What can they do, poor things? And then, after laughing at this joke, then I asked him, how do I overcome this? And he said, it's very simple really. You just have to be like me. You just have to become like me. Think of how I would handle it. And and the interview was over. He called the next person. And I said, what? This is what was the beauty of it. So the teaching happened, and then also whatever was going on, my anxiety, my frustration about not being able to carry this out, that was also at the same time the upashamana was done. And this we learn from, this is really the beauty of the lineage. This is the lineage. It's not just, Mahavakya is given, and Mahavakya has to be assimilated, understood. And the teacher is really like the Veda, who is compared to 1,000 functional mothers. We have to add the word functional. Yeah. 1,000 functional mothers who is able to take care of everything. And so the teacher also, cares. And that caring is a form of parenting. And the parenting is a very functional parenting, not the kind of parenting that any child has experienced ever. Because all the parenting that we have experienced in the world, in the Jagat, is dysfunctional. Because of the fallibility of the caregivers. The caregivers being eminently fallible, the father will not be available, the mother will be angry, father will be inconsistent, all these are there. But being reparented by the Vedanta teacher, very, like of Pujya Swamiji's caliber, we have the first taste of functional parenting. Or Prajapati for that matter, same thing. A functional parenting where the parenting is avoiding all the traps of the parenting that we know in the world. And what are some of those traps? We know these very well. We have helicopter parents. You know what they are, right? What are helicopter parents? They hover over the offspring and make a terrible noise. Chop, 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 chop. No space and no ability for the offspring to develop its own personality, all the time micromanaging everything. This is what is called the helicopter parent. And then we have also the tiger mom, tiger dad. What is that? The one who is afraid to praise their own child because they're afraid that it will get spoiled. This is a very interesting form of parenting prevalent in parts of Asia, including India. You don't give the child any kind of positive reinforcement at all. And even if the child, brings the first rank, comes first, yeah, but you could have done better. 98% I got, yeah, but what happened to the 2%? This is what it is. Their own insecurity is rubbed off on the child, and their own unfulfilled agendas of the caregivers are replayed through the life of the child. I couldn't get this, so therefore you will do this and you will relive my expectations. You will fulfill the expectations that I never could not. I never could. And then, another model of parenting is the modern one, where, this is very, I don't know what, it doesn't have a name, But the phenomenon looks like this because, the exigencies of life, both the parents have to work, mother has to go to work, father has to go to work, the child, is there being taken care of by others, and the parents see the child in the evening, the parents see the child during the weekend, the parents miss the child really. As much as the child misses them, the parents are missing the child, and the missing makes them also feel very guilty. And the guilt makes one an over-permissive parent. Number one, that's the first problem. Because you don't feel like saying no to the child, you hardly see it. And you're seeing it for, 15 minutes during the weekdays, and then quality time, and then maybe during the weekends. So you don't feel like saying no. You keep saying yes, yes, yes. And the other, that is part A with this modern parenting. And the part B is like you want to become friends with the child. This is the problem with the nuclear family, which is neither new nor clear to me. So this is what the problem is. You want to become friends with the child. Nothing wrong in being a friend to your child. But then you want to share all these things and want the child to approve of you. This is the problem. You have to make friends and look for the sources of approval elsewhere. You can't expect the child to approve of you as a parent or approve of everything that you're doing. And so this also compromises the parenting. And of course we can go on and on, but these are just the three forms of dysfunctional parenting with which may ring true in one's life. And this, reparenting, which is a very important part of the teaching process, happens in a manner which is in great contrast to any of the kinds of parenting that one has been exposed to. Because here, the teacher who is forced to be a parent, forced means no choice. The teacher is also the parent, but the teacher has dispassion. The Vedanta teacher has vairagya, unlike the dysfunctional caregiver. The teacher does not want anything except for the teaching to be assimilated. If there is an expectation, the expectation is that the teaching will be assimilated. Sometimes even that is not there. Because we know, if not this life, next life is there. Why worry? What is the pressure? So this is a parenting without expectations. And since the teacher is an embodiment of compassion and love, because that is what the Atma is, it's an embodiment of love and compassion. Love is a dynamic expression of Ananta, that Anantatvam, Anantyam, that limitlessness. When it is manifest in the day-to-day activities, it comes out as love, unconditional love. So then, the parenting, takes place very quickly and very beautifully, because here the inner child is validated in the course of the teaching. It is never rejected. And it is allowed to integrate, because the adult is the one who is taught. And only the adult is taught, not the inner child. The inner child just cannot be taught. It is not available for the knowledge. It just wants to be loved. And the teacher, a very, skilled Vedanta teacher, has learnt how to parent the inner child very minimally, because it's a very, very tricky situation. If you overparent it, then it becomes dependent. Yeah. And if you neglect it completely, then the adult it hijacks the adult, and there is no one available to teach. It's a very tricky dynamic. And we can see this even in the regular parenting in certain, moments. Like when the mother is helping the child to take its first steps. And the child pretends, I can't walk, lift me up. No, I'm tired, the legs are shaking. It's all a big pretense. The child is not pretending knowingly. It really feels in the grip of fear because it has never stood up before. And it's all wobbly. Oh my God, lift me up. And the mother will just, in India what they do is they carry one ball or an apple or an orange, And then the mother starts walking backward, holding this out. And the child is crying, half laughing, and following this apple. And in the middle it falls down. The mother allows it to fall down. This is perhaps the only time where the child is crying but the mother is laughing. That inner space is there. You see? So like this, the Vedanta teacher allows the child to fall sometimes. Minimally helps it walk and minimally helps it integrate. And teaches the adult how to take care of this inner child. Very beautiful. And so, if we look at this interpretation, especially with a name called Virochana, and especially it's not accidental, every word in the Upanishad is very, very important. So, if all the V words, Vijighatsaha, Vijaraha, Vimaraha, Vimrityuhu, and then Virochanaha. So in the same manner, so we here have one person pretending to be two people, or one person split between the child and the adult, not knowing how to integrate, seeing double, and Prajapati's kindness addressing them in the dual. Hello gentlemen, how are both of you? With what view have you both resided in the ashram for 32 years? Because the inner child also stayed. Because the inner child is a shadow. It will go wherever the person goes. With what view have you lived in the ashram? And they just repeat faithfully what they have learnt. And they say, this Atma which is free of guilt, free of fear, free of death, free of disease, this is what has to be understood, this is what has to be looked into, and to look into this alone, we are here. And let us see how Prajapati teaches the adult and the child at the same time. The Sura and the Asura, both are taught. Let us read that. Tauha Prajapatihi Uvacha Yaha Eshaha Akshini Purushaha Drishyate Yesha Atma Iti. Yeah, so this is a very interesting answer. He says, you want to know the Atma? Very simple. Just like Pujya Swamiji said to me, you just have to become like me, that's all. So just like that, he says, simple boys, you want to see the Atma? No problem. You know what the Atma is? The Atma is that which is seen in the eye. Full stop. Oh, seen in the eye? Which is the person, Purusha. The Atma is the person seen in the eye. Oh, what is that? How is that? We'll see in the next class. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Yeah, half an hour break exactly, and then we will reconvene.